meeting of the Attleboro School Committee is called to order. This meeting is being electronically recorded. In a moment, I'll ask you to please rise and join the committee in the salute to the flag. And subsequent to that, I'd ask you to remain standing for a moment of silence. Please join the committee in the salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As many in the community know, an important member of the Attleboro School District community passed away recently. Bob Haggerty was the former director of vocational education for the Attleboro School District and made a remarkable impact on Attleboro High School. I asked his former colleague, Ron Strominski, who was an assistant principal at the high school, to share his thoughts. And so this is from Mr. Strominski. You can read about the broad and varied positions and honors that Bob Haggerty achieved in our city in his lifetime, but knowing and working with him was indeed a special experience. Bob brought a heightened degree of insight into all life's challenges which confronted him. As a teacher and school administrator, he especially understood and demonstrated his total commitment to the success of every student. If there is such a thing as a Renaissance man, it was Bob Haggerty. His expertise and instruction and supervision are well documented. His teachers saw his strength of character every day, and they appreciated his support of the difficult work that they engaged in. Even after his retirement, he was always available to help in any way he could. Bob will be missed by all who had the privilege to know him. Please remain standing and join the committee in a moment of silence. And our thoughts certainly go out to the Haggerty family and all who had the opportunity to work with Mr. Haggerty. Thank you. The first item on our agenda is our open forum session. This is a time when members of the public may address the school committee. Open forum is not a time for committee members to engage in dialogue with members of the public. Guidelines for open forum are available to you. Please know that we are interested in what you have to say, but we cannot respond without background information on your issue. Would anyone like to address the school committee? Okay, in that case, that closes open forum, and we'll move on to our consent agenda. A motion to accept a donation in the amount of $357.50 from Target to the Brennan Middle School Gifts donation line.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. A motion to accept a donation in the amount of $980.96 from Target to the Attleboro High School Gifts donation line.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. A motion to approve a field trip for approximately 16 Attleboro High School student council members to attend the MASC Leadership Conference from March 11th to the 13th, 2015 at the Conference Center in Hyannis. This will be student funded.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. A motion to approve the recommendation of the Director of Finance Controller on the disposition of several broken, obsolete, or otherwise unusable musical instruments from the music program at Attleboro High School through the One Man Band Incorporated Musical Instrument Trading Company.
So moved.
Second.
This is an opportunity that was brought to the committee's attention by Mr. Rooney and some of his staff members. Essentially, this company takes unusable musical instruments and sends back usable musical instruments. Is that a fair summary, Mr. Rooney? Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We'll now move on to our Around Attleboro events, and our student representative, Tyler Stowe, is with us tonight. Mr. Stowe, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And if you could share with us a little bit about what's going on around Attleboro.
Okay, so on Thursday at 9:30 a.m. there's the Saving Makes Sense program for the 3rd and 4th graders. And basically a summary of it is that it teaches the kids how to like budget money, open savings accounts, etc., which is like very integral to their survival because a lot of the people in the high school don't even know those skills.
A lot of people outside the high school don't either.
Then the Hyman Fine Elementary School volunteer training program for the parents, guardians, or community members that are interested in volunteering, so they'll go to like a training session before they can volunteer. The ACE PAC meeting is also on Thursday, so all are welcome at Brennan Middle School. All honesty, I don't know that much about it, but Ms. Ferreira could probably help you out more than I could, but The meet and greet is on Thursday with the parents and guardians, special education staff.
And either Mr. Farrar or Mrs. Scales, if you have any comments about the first ASPAC meeting.
Any parent or guardian of a student receiving special education support services is encouraged to attend. Our first meeting will be to meet some of the administrators that they'll be working with, but we also educate parents and guardians on special education law.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Starr, I know you have some reminders from our previous update.
Yeah, as I had, me and Jack had said last time, on Tuesday, both of these, Tuesday, the 23rd, is the curriculum night for the 7th and 8th graders. Just another, again, as I had said last week, it's just a way to connect the parents to the teachers, et cetera, like that, so they can get more comfortable in their school. And then the on Thursday, there's the senior night, which is really, really important to help the parents be informed on how to get their children into college so they aren't trying to do it themselves.
That is a really, really important night. So important, in fact, that the chairman of the school committee should not put the wrong date on the slide.
Yeah.
So, Tuesday, September 23rd, tomorrow night, will be senior guidance night, and we certainly encourage the members of the class of 2015 to attend. Get it off the screen there, that way we can forget about that. We don't want to see that either. So yeah, tomorrow night, guidance night at the high school. As a result of guidance night at the high school, the curriculum instruction subcommittee meeting that was originally scheduled for tomorrow night has been moved till for back 1 week, so September 30th. Curriculum and instruction will take the field, but tomorrow night is guidance night, and if you're a senior or if you're a family member of a senior, we certainly hope you'll be there. Okay, moving on to our new business agenda. Our first item tonight is consideration of the superintendent's recommendation to appoint Dr. Linda McSweeney as the Director of Special Education and Support Services. As the committee knows and the community knows, Dr. McCarthy resigned her position in August. She left effective September 3rd. The committee voted on August 13th to convene a search committee. It was co-chaired by Mr. Sheehan and Ms. Singer, and that search committee has brought forth a recommendation that I'd ask Mr. Sheehan and Ms. Singer to share with the committee at this time.
At this time, I would like to hand it over to Mrs. Singer as the co-chair to say a few words with regard to the process and other people that were instrumental in bringing our recommendation forward.
Thank you.
So we had a great screening committee. We do have some members here. Mr. Johnson, the principal at Hill Roberts, Mr. Bowles, the principal at Coelho Middle School, Mrs. Angela Ferreira, and Mrs. Karen Marr are here. They were all part of the search and interview committee. And after a very careful, thoughtful, deliberate process, it was very clear to myself and the rest of the committee that Dr. McSweeney was the best fit for this district and to be our next Director of Special Education. So we're all extremely excited and pleased with Dr. McSweeney's experience and her leadership, and just very excited to have you, and I look forward to working with you in this new role.
Thank you, Ms. Singer. Mr. Sheehan, before I open up to the committee, any other comments?
I thought that the committee overall did an absolutely outstanding job. It was a very, very thorough process. I think we're very, very fortunate in this district to have a committed administrator with the expertise with regard to not just general education, but special education and her background. I think she is here to really make a mark for all of our children. But as the Director of Special Education, I really am encouraged with where the direction, or what the direction is going to be in the district for special education. We're very fortunate to have Dr. McSweeney on board, and hopefully for a long, long time to come.
Thank you, Mr. Sheehan. Any questions or comments from the school committee? Mr. Tyler.
Is she going to address the school
I think
committee?
the protocol is after the vote takes place. So if there are any comments now.
I would say my comment is Dr. McSweeney is a great educator. I was kind of torn about this when it was brought in front of me because I had reservations about the changes at Studley. I know that people think that I'm the unofficial cheerleader on the school committee about Studley schools, but when Janello left, I was very worried about keeping that homely feeling in Studley that Janella brought, and Dr. McSweeney absolutely brought that back into that school. And so I am sad to see her leaving Studley, but I'm very happy for her in advancing her career, and having a chance to work with her, even on AEA negotiations and stuff. She is an absolute wonderful educator, professional, and I wish her the best of luck in this, and I know that she's going to take our special education department to the next level. So I just want to say that I'm torn. And I hope the replacement is as good as her, but she'll be so much missed steadily because she actually bridged that gap 100%, and I thank you for that, Dr. McSweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Tyler. Mrs. Scales.
I'm also very excited to have the pleasure to be working with her soon. I just excited that you already know the culture of Attleboro, so you can hit the ground running and with all the work that needs to be done. And you already know about all the good things that's already happening, so I'm happy about that.
Thank you, Mr. Scales. Mr. Storrs.
Yeah, I want to commend the committee. I didn't expect this to be coming to us as fast as it is. You guys did an amazing job for this to be coming to us so soon after that bomb hit on our district a few months ago. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Storrs. Any other questions or comments from the school committee? And I would just pick up on a point that Mr. Storrs raised with regard to the rapidity with which the transition process has unfolded. That is one of the reasons that is the case, is that as the process was unfolding, Dr. McSweeney stepped forward and volunteered herself as a candidate. And I think that whenever individuals are assuming positions of leadership, and that's certainly the case for her successor, Ms. DePalma, as well, but individuals who demonstrate the eagerness to step forward and show the initiative and want to take on that expanded responsibility, that's certainly something that this school committee values and something that we need. Another thing that we need are individuals who are invested in this district, have been here for some time, and want to stay here for a long time moving forward. And that, frankly, it's incumbent upon this school committee to try to oversee this district in a way where it's a place where people want to stay and want to grow their careers. And certainly a responsibility that we take very seriously. And we're grateful that in this instance we've been able to find someone who is, I think after this many years we can call you a veteran of the Attleboro school system, right, Dr. McSweeney? I think that's a fair characterization, and certainly for Mr. DePalma as well. So at this time I would entertain a motion to appoint Dr. McSweeney to the position of Director of Special Education and Support Services with a contract to be negotiated subsequent to the appointment. Motion is in order. Any further discussion? And we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Storrs?
Yes.
Mr. Withers?
Yes.
Mrs. Sawyer?
Yes.
Mrs. Scales?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy, yes. Mr. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Tyler?
Yes.
Mrs. Zito?
Yes.
Ms.
Welcome
Singer?
aboard.
Yes.
Congratulations, Dr. McSweeney. If you could come join the committee.
I am so pleased to be sitting here this evening, and I want to thank the school committee for your vote this evening for my appointment. I also want to make sure that I thank Superintendent Sheehan and Assistant Superintendent Dave Sawyer for their wonderful support and encouragement, and have shown all of us administrators leadership, and that was one of the reasons I too wanted to step up. It's a wonderful administrative team. I look forward to continuing the good work that has been done in Attleboro. I know that I have the opportunity, and I too am pulled in my heartfelt sincerity with working with the families at Studley and students. It was a difficult decision, but I felt one that was important for myself as well as the district. I also know that with this opportunity, I will be able to work with even more families in Attleboro, more children, and that's exciting to me as well, and also building an understanding in the community of the good work that is happening. I also have to say that I have been very impressed with the caliber of our faculty, and that I know that as I go along and visit programs in the district that I will see some outstanding work that is being done. And I look forward to working with everyone. So I thank you this evening for this vote of confidence. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. McSweeney. And it is a vote of confidence, and I would say that when the search committee came forward, and I received the communication from Ms. Singer and Mr. Sheehan that their consensus choice had been found, and there was overwhelming and enthusiastic support for your candidacy. Mrs. Scales and I had the opportunity to speak with you for a few minutes prior to the official recommendation. And one of the first points that Dr. McSweeney raised when asked why she was interested in this position was that because she felt as though Studley was in a good place, that it was prepared for a leadership transition. And I think that in the fact that as an individual, as she was poised for this significant transition in her career, that her thoughts were with the building that she has led over the last several years, I think really speaks to the type of leader she is and to the caliber of leadership that she's provided Studley. So with apologies to the staff at Studley and to the families of Studley, she'll be right down the street, and she'll be reachable. But we're very happy to have her joining the central leadership team. We look forward to working with you. And I'm glad you say that you're happy to be sitting here, because now that you're the Director of Special Education, you will be sitting here more often. And we look forward to seeing you. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
So we do need someone to lead Studley, and Mr. Sheehan has chosen an individual who has been invested and committed to the Attleboro School District for quite some time. Ms. DePalma joined the district in 1997. She served in a variety of capacities, and I'd ask Ms. DePalma to come up so that Mr. Sheehan can share with us his appointment as the interim principal of Studley Elementary School.
It's my pleasure to be able to appoint Joanne DePalma. I actually have interviewed Joanne for other positions. I said to her, there'll be a match. You have great potential, and you will be an administrator in this district. And her commitment to the Attleboro Public Schools for 17 years has not gone unnoticed. She truly has been impressive to me in every committee that I've seen her in and acted on. Her educational background, her CAGS in administration, and her master's degree in human development and education, and her other master's degree with regard to special education and education. Her certificates that are general education and special education and administrative earns her the right to be able to sit here. But even more so, the type of job that I know needs to take place at Studley as an elementary principal, and her being there. I had no reservations whatsoever when I went and started looking at a potential interim. The first person I went to was David Sawyer, who knows the people in the district far better than I do, and he had no reservations whatsoever as well. We know that Joanne will work very, very hard at this. We know that Linda and Dr. McSweeney will in fact be a great mentor for her and during this transition. So it is without reservation and much confidence that I appoint Joanne DePalma as the interim principal at Studley. What the community should know and the committee is that that position, as well as other positions in the district, will in fact be posted officially sometime in June. And I certainly would encourage Joanne to apply, but at this time we're looking at an interim position and then posting 100% in June.
Thank you, Mr. Sheehan. Mr. Palmer, congratulations. We're happy to have you here tonight. We're happy to have had you in the district for the length of time in your service. You mentioned to me the other night at Studley, which I know you've spent time in a variety of the buildings in the school district, but I would say I haven't walked in Studley many times in the past few years, but you haven't been there. So you certainly know the building well, know the staff, and know the families. And you mentioned that your career in the Attleboro schools started at Studley, and I think it's fitting and appropriate that you'll now be the leader of that building. So,
thank you very much. I really appreciate your confidence, and I'm looking forward to this. I'm very excited. I did talk to Janella today, just so that you know, and she was okay. So I do look forward to keeping the work going that's been done, and it's a wonderful legacy I get to fill in, and I hope to keep everything as smooth as it is. It's a wonderful building, wonderful people, wonderful families.
No, I don't think there's any question that you'll have the opportunity to both sustain and build upon the momentum that that Dr. McSweeney has overseen. As you know, if you do a really good job, we can name a playground after you, as we did with Janelle. That's just an added incentive.
It is. I look forward to that.
Mr. Plant, we had a moment on that the I don't even know what event that was, curriculum night?
Yes.
Curriculum night, where we had to find Dr. McSweeney, and Mr. Palmer shared with me that she doesn't like using the intercom, and I shared with her that she better learn to use the intercom. So, but congratulations. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Okay, and our final administrative major personnel move of the evening is just an announcement from Mr. Sheehan, someone that we're very happy for. I'm sure we'll have the opportunity to communicate our commendation to her in person at some point over the next couple of months, but she is busy preparing to take over a school system, and therefore can't be with us tonight. But Mr. Sheehan, I know you have an announcement with regard to Ms. Coffin.
Yeah, it's with mixed emotions that we lose an administrator as the principal of Warm Sutter in Carol Coffin. What's really commendable for Carol Coffin that she spent the time here honing her skills and so forth, and now she gets to become the superintendent of schools at Belchertown. I think that's a big plus for this district, that people look highly at the administration in this. We don't like to lose any of our people. That's why we promote people like Dr. McSweeney. And so this is a big loss for the district, but again, we should feel very proud that her experience here and what she's done at Warm Sutter Middle School has enhanced her candidacy in other places. And she will be leaving us January 1st to go to Belchertown, and I will provide you more information with regard to the interim situation there and how we're going to fill those positions in the very near future.
Thank you, Mr. Sheehan. And again, we offer our congratulations. Mr. Tyler and I had the opportunity to confer with the Belchertown School Committee. It was, I think, pretty clear at that time. Well, I was on a speakerphone, but so perhaps Mike can say whether it was clear or not. But it seemed to me, based on what they were saying, that Mrs. Coffin's candidacy was likely going to be looked upon favorably, and certainly it's well deserved. And we wish her the best. And again, we'll see her at some point over the next couple of months. But congratulations, sir. Okay, that is it for our, and actually, excuse me, our Data and Accountability Coordinator, Ms. Roy, has also recently been appointed the Assistant Superintendent of Schools in Dartmouth, which I don't believe we were able to communicate publicly at our last meeting.
Probably correct.
Okay, but certainly we wish Ms. Roy congratulations. That's a extremely important position that frankly is not talked about a lot. It's one of that position is one of the ways in which we know that we're making progress and doing what it is that we're supposed to do. And she's done that very well over the last several years, and she's leaving too, so we will respond accordingly.
Yeah.
Moving on to our, we're going to break up our new and old business because we've got a variety of items in our subcommittee reports. And so we're going to be moving now to our policy subcommittee report, and the chair of our policy subcommittee, Mr. Withers.
Thank you, Chairman Murphy. We had a productive meeting last week of September 15th in which we moved to bring several recommendations to the full committee today. The majority of these that we'll be going through are really just kind of administration cleanups of existing policies and exhibits to kind of come in line with our current titles for our positions in our administration. The first is policy BDC, the title of which is appointed committee officials. There were some recommended changes which cleaned up the language a little bit, and as you'll see, updated the titles of our administration, the new Director of Finance and Controller, and the proper title of Director of Special Education and Support Services. So what I'd be looking for now is a motion to amend these, to approve these amendments as set forth in the materials you have.
I do have one quick question.
Sure.
I saw that we're getting rid of the word recommendation and changing it to nomination.
Mm-hmm.
But the general law, Mass General Law, actually uses the word recommendation, so I was questioning why we're making that change.
Well, I think when, as we saw today, I believe, well, I guess recommendation and nomination is really kind of some semantics. But
I don't know. I guess I look at nomination as like the principal was just nominated, which means it's a done deal. While with these positions, ultimately the school committee has the responsibility to approve or disapprove the recommendation of the superintendent. I don't think it's a big deal. I just figured I'd ask the question because it is, the Mass General Law says upon the recommendation of the superintendent, so I thought I'd ask.
I'm sorry, can someone fill me in?
Yeah, so
I was
Mr.
saying
Storrs.
farewell to our hardworking search committee.
Mr. Storrs has a question about the changing the word recommendation to nomination.
It's the functional equivalent of a nomination. I think that, frankly, the statutes are inconsistent in the sense that there's one statute governing the special ed director and another governing the other grouping of positions, but essentially there's no functional difference.
I don't think it's a major issue. I know the law said recommendation, so I figured I'd ask.
Any other questions?
I'm just curious which policy we're
So on the first one,
Before
policy
I
BDC.
Before I vote yes on something, I want to.
Policy BDC,
Got it.
appointed committee officials.
Thank you.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Second was some proposed changes to policy DBJ, which is Budget Transfer Authority. And again, what this did is it changed the name of the policy from Finance, Facilities, and Procurement to our new title of Finance and Budget Subcommittee. It changed the word following, the term following meeting to next scheduled meeting, and then cleaned up some of the language, and finally also changed business manager to our new title of Director of Finance and Controller. So I'd be looking again for a motion to approve the amendments as set forth in the policy you have in front of you.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The third that we have is some proposed amendments to DGA-E, so exhibit to policy DGA, and this is authorization of signatures. And what this did for persons authorized to sign various documents, it changed the title from business manager to director of finance and controller. And so I'd be looking again for a motion to approve the changes as recommended.
Second.
Just a quick recommendation. In the past, whenever we had something that came up that was -E, we would make it E1, just in case in the future we ever needed a need to or beyond. Minimal change.
I know there've been a couple of questions with regard to the labeling. Since the votes tonight are approved, but then given because of the policy, it technically gets tabled and it comes before us again in 2 weeks. I think we'll work out all of the labeling issues in the meantime, and members can we can solicit some feedback and get them labeled appropriately. Thank you for pointing it out.
Yeah, I think just building on that, I think we'll see throughout the year that in cleaning up a lot of these policies, there's going to be, a lot of exhibits that should be policies and a lot of mislabeled exhibits. So we'll get it cleaned up as we go through the year. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The next policy, or it's actually an exhibit, actually has some substantive changes in it. It's DGA Exhibit 1, Purchasing Procedures. And what this change is doing is it's in number 4. It's requiring quotes for purchases over $10,000 in value. And it's requiring sealed bids for purchases of over $34,999, which those two numbers are consistent with with what Massachusetts law actually provides now. And it does have another sentence that's added that in the event it's under $10,000 but more than $2,000, it's encouraged that we still get quotes, but it's not a requirement.
So moved.
Second.
Just as opening discussion, this was on the recommendation of our new Director of Finance and Controller, Mr. Furtado. Yes, Mr. Tyler.
It's just a question. I mean, most of this is Mass General law, but I think we need to add some wording into this one. When it says purchases above $2,000 are made by securing 3 quotes. Most of those, I think we should add by written or phone, because that's what the Mass State law says. That you can actually get those by phone instead of a written one.
Doesn't it say that?
I just think that might want to be added into.
It's actually, it's in
It
there.
does say it.
does say it.
What's that?
It does say it.
Where does it say
It's
that?
in parentheses at the paragraph 4, the end of the first line.
Okay. Okay, we're good. Yep.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next proposed amendment also is a slight substantive change as well. This is policy JJF. It's student activity agency accounts. And what this is doing is it's proposing increasing the maximum amount the various school agency accounts can have in them. They haven't been updated since 1998, 99. And so it'll allow the elementary schools to have 7,000, middle schools 40,000, and the high school 80,000. This again was on the recommendation of our Director of Finance and Controller.
So moved.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And lastly, we have an amendment to, it's currently policy CCB Exhibit 2. And the title is Attleboro School District Line of Authority. This is probably the most substantive change of any of the policies we looked at. And so what it is doing is laying out a clear line of authority for our central administration. And in connection with this, we asked our administrators to also review policy CCB Exhibit 1, which is administrative organization, which just details what the various administrators' responsibilities are. But in order to do that, we thought we needed to have this chain of command cleaned up, both with our new titles for our administrators, our new administrators we have in the district currently, and also administrators that we might not currently have, but we agree that we need in the near future. So what I'm looking for is a motion to approve this amended policy CCB Exhibit 2, Attleboro School District Line of Authority.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, Mr. Storrs?
Yeah, okay, if you take a look at is the plan for this one to replace both exhibits, or no?
No,
Okay, and the reason I bring that up, the answer is no, correct?
Right, because, well, the other exhibit is in a line of authority.
Right.
It's right.
Well, that's why
Take a
I'm
look.
bringing it up. If you take a look at the line of authority exhibit as it exists now, it's only in-school personnel, starts with the superintendent and works down to the principals. While the changes that were made starts with the school committee, which is correct for the other exhibit, but not for the lines of authority exhibit. It is correct for the administrative organization.
Right, but I think that's part of the reason why we thought we needed to amend this, is that it wasn't, the Attleboro School Committee, it should be at the top of the chart.
Okay, so that was on
clean it up.
purpose?
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to make sure. The only other question I had was, if you're looking at the old one, everything kind of flows down. For example, the business manager reports to, I guess what I'm trying to say is the new business manager position, doesn't that report to or through the Director of Finance Controller, or is that not correct?
Yeah, Mr. Murphy?
So there's a few different points here, and this is a pretty nuanced change. The first thing I would say is that our policy book right now provides clear guidance on some issues. It provides ambiguous guidance on way too many issues. And so I think you'll see, as the policy committee goes through the work this year, that there'll be a number of issues that they will be endeavoring to try to clarify. This is one of them. The two policies that have been identified, one is the chain of command, which, as Mr. Withers said, has to start with the governing body recognized by the city charter. The line of authority from the administrative standpoint always comes through the superintendent. The second exhibit, and right now it's an exhibit, is the division of responsibility. That has to do with the areas of authority or responsibility that flow to various administrators. That's what we've asked the central administration to look at. The reason, in addition to the lack of clarity, that this issue is being taken up is that we have had, over the course of the last year, some significant changes to the way our administration is organized. We've only had a net gain of one position that is filled. That's to the Director of Finance position. The ELL Coordinator position was elevated to the role of Director of Student Services. Those positions, up until this is adopted, don't exist from a policy standpoint, and that's something that needed to be clarified. The other issue, and some members of the previous committee, I know Mr. Tyler in particular, dealt with this on occasion, is that there wasn't a clear line of authority when the superintendent was unavailable. And there was a time where, Mr. Tyler, I know, may remember, that we were told there were a couple of building administrators who seemed to be selected, and the committee was informed that they would be in charge of the district for a number of days. That may have been convenient in the moment, but it is not a good way to govern a school system. And so what this essentially does is it tries to solve all those issues. And then one other issue that I think is particularly important, and something that this committee has dealt with sort of in an incidental way periodically over the last year, which is that there is a clear consensus that an 800-employee, $65 million organization needs a personnel director. There are very few 800-employee, $65 million organizations that I know of that do not have a personnel director. At the moment, we do not have we're not able to identify the funding for a personnel director. That's why this committee cut it out of the budget on May 19th, but maybe before that, maybe April 30th. At one of our meetings in the spring, we cut that because we knew at this point we don't have the funds for a $95,000 a year position, which is what we identified it. The other consensus that's developed that the superintendent has spoken in a very compelling manner about over the course of the last year is that, as other districts are beginning to, eventually this district will need a person who is in charge of instructional technology. If we're going to get to the point that we want to from a teaching and learning standpoint, we need a point person on those issues. Again, for the same reason that we don't have a personnel director, and we're not going to anytime in the, imminently, I don't think, we don't have an instructional technology person. By adopting this policy, we are creating those positions. The superintendent knows, and we know, that they're not going to be filled next week. We certainly hope that they're filled soon, because the students will be better off, certainly with the instructional technology, and our staff will be better off once we have a personnel director, but it's not happening right now. And so this essentially creates those positions, and our hope, frankly, would be that when it comes time to make the argument that now is the time to fill those positions, this committee, or perhaps several committees down the road, will be able to say this position has existed for X amount of time, and it's overdue. And frankly, it's been overdue since prior to this policy. This is just recognizing a problem that we've talked about in various ways. And the other, I guess the last point I'll make is that the division is based on state law, that the state law recognizes certain positions that report to the school committee through the superintendent. Those are Director of Special Education, a business administrator, in our case being the Director of Finance, and an Assistant Superintendent of Schools. They work for the superintendent, but they report to the committee through the superintendent. The other positions are vitally important. Again, some of them, for instance, Ms. DeAngelis' position was long overdue, and her responsibilities over the course of the last year is to take on a number of tasks that are not always enjoyable, but again, need to be done, and they're being done in a way that, again, should have been done for some time. You don't always make a lot of friends with some of these positions, but they're extremely important to the future of the district. Again, the way we've structured the business office is to have both the Director of Finance and the business manager handling some of the vendor issues. So that's sort of the rationale behind it. It pulls together a variety of different issues that we've dealt with in the hope of providing some clarity to our administrators.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Storrs?
I totally see the need for a Director of Instructional Technology, hopefully someday when we're to that point, as well as bringing back a Director of Personnel. Normally, positions have to be approved. There's an explanation of I forgot what it's called, but there's a job description that gets approved by the committee. So we're not really approving these positions at this time because we don't have a job description.
Well, the policy would supersede the job description. The job description would be an appropriate exhibit to a policy of this nature, and that will come forward once the division of responsibilities chart has come forward. But this is the cover sheet essentially to all that type of substance that does eventually need to happen.
But how can we approve the position without knowing what the position is?
Well, the personnel director, I would say, up until 4 years ago, everybody knew what that was. The director of instructional technology, I think that's a valid point, that eventually it will be a new position, and there will be a job description necessary for it. But I think that rather than wanting to revisit this particular line repeatedly, I think it's best to do it now, to send the message that we're a district that values technology, that we recognize the staffing need of having a point person to work on these issues, and with the understanding that, frankly, they've got a little bit of time to come up with the job description, because we're not going to be posting this anytime.
But the job description would come back before the committee.
Absolutely. It's by policy.
That's what I really wanted to care about.
By policy, it needs to.
Yeah, I think the idea now is to get these positions approved in there, so that we have time. We're not going to be appointing anyone in the next couple of months. We can get job descriptions before us, but get this policy approved so that the clock is running on it, that we have these positions in place. This school committee, thinks it's important that we have a director of technology. This school committee thinks it's important we have a director of personnel, and the next step is the job description. Yes, Mr.
And the division of responsibility that the administration will be working on. Which, again, that might be something that changes, because as those positions are filled, we will take some responsibilities that are being loaded onto individuals in a fairly unfair manner, and try to divide it up in a way that's more efficient and more productive. But yeah, I mean, this is a policy, but what we're dealing with now is certainly in the abstract. Hopefully not for long. Hopefully that the situation will be such that we can responsibly post and then ultimately fill some of these positions.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And that concludes my report.
Next up, we have our Finance and Budget Subcommittee report. With that, our Finance and Budget Chair, Mr. Larson.
The Finance and Budget Committee met September 9th. We have two motions to bring forward. The first is a motion to authorize the Director of Finance and Controller to transfer $762,000 from the HMO budget line and $190,708 from the bilingual budget line, for a total of $952,708 into the accounts listed in a budget transfer sheet dated September 8th, 2014, with the accompanying memorandum dated September 9th, 2014. All this information was provided to you with your update. If I could have that motion, please.
So moved.
My only comment, and we discussed this in the committee, while $952,000 does sound like a lot of money, it represents approximately 1.5% of our total budget. And when we were going through the line items, a lot of it really was putting money back into accounts that we were transferring money into at the end of FY14. So a lot of this is what we'll call pre-housekeeping based on events of the past. And I would ask Mr. Furtado if he has any other comments in reference to it, but that's about how it all shook out at the meeting. And Mr. Tyler?
So basically what we're doing here is voting on something that we said as the committee we were going to do before we finalized the FY15 budget. We were going to be realistic and put the numbers back where they belong.
And what we're doing now is putting them in there, so that when we look at the budget reports going forward, now over the course of the year, you'll actually have numbers that actually represented what the actuals were close to last year, so they should be less deviations between the accounts. So, are there any other questions? Mr. Storrs?
Looking at all the different values on the right-hand side, the biggest one is Hyman Fine Special Education Teachers, $225,000. Can we have an understanding? Can you please explain why that's available?
That particular line wasn't funded for 15.
Okay, and that was because?
I don't know.
Anybody know?
I don't have that
It was
information.
probably just a.
I think we have a volunteer behind you. Mr. Rose, please.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Stewart. Bottom line, that's my mistake.
Oh, okay, just a mistake.
If I could just take 30 seconds. Going through and building in the budget into Munis, try to use last year's budget as a guide, plug in, and whatever the surplus was, plugged into the HMO. And that's a little bit of the background. But Mark didn't have anything to do with that, that was me.
Understand?
So, Tom, before you,
Yes,
before you
Mike.
get up, is it not your mistake? It's just the way it kind of unfolded.
Well, I understand, yes.
Okay, I just don't want you to come out.
No.
It's just the way that it unfolded.
And Mike, I appreciate, Mr. Tyler, I appreciate it. In a perfect world, there wouldn't be any transfer required. Everything would be absolutely perfect. Obviously, that's not the case. We plug in the budgets into Munis as best we can based on the budget that was approved and the budgets that we had last year, and then we start the fiscal year. And then throughout the summer, there are going to be adjustments, there are going to be changes. For example, the healthcare budget. We build that budget back in March and April, and then we find out what the real numbers are going to be in May and June. And so there's going to be a little bit of a cushion and adjust accordingly.
Thank you, Tom, for correcting Bill. Sorry.
No, not a problem. I mean, I you know, when you look at them at face value, some of the numbers are rather large, but when you step back and look at what it actually represents in part of our entire budget, you know, it really does represent housekeeping. So, that's second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. And the second motion that we'd like to bring forward, and ask Mark Mr. Furtado to help me with this. Motion to endorse the efforts of the Director of Finance and Controller to solicit quotes to repair the telephone system at Attleboro High School. Move. Second?
Second.
As most of us all know, there have been some issues with the telephone system here at the Attleboro High School. Really? That would be a very nice way of saying it. We discussed different options that Mr. Furtado is investigating. I believe he has a recommendation.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we developed the specification. We had two vendors come into the building to review the system we have in place and to provide us with some input as to their approaches for minimizing the cost to us while solving the problem that we've had for quite some time. And as you can see from the three quotes we received, the systems that proposed were identical except for the voicemail system. The first listing there actually has a more robust voicemail system than the other two. Other than that, the quotes were, the approach is identical for all three groups. This is sort of the least expensive way to get a system in here that will handle the capacity that we have. We don't have to change the handsets that are on the people's desks or on the walls in the classrooms or any of that stuff. That all stays intact. There's some wiring work that's associated with these proposals to clean up some of the mess that's in the office area near the phone rack. And so those were received Friday afternoon, compiled today, and we'd like to go forward with the lowest quote. Per the review by Mr. Withers, the state and school committee policy allows us to do that under $25,000, or with a new policy of under $35,000. And you can see that the lowest quote is such.
Okay. Mr. Murphy.
There's two things, and that's why the motion is to endorse the efforts, because the administration has the authority to do this, and I'm grateful to the administration for doing it. On occasion, some of the messages I've left on your cell phones have been a product of my frustration with hearing about getting to the high school operator every time, sometimes with fairly urgent matters. So we appreciate that, because like a personnel director, a $65 million organization with 6,000 kids and 800 employees needs to have a phone system. And so
that works.
Correct, that works. Not just desk ornaments, real phones.
So, for the committee's
now we're cooking with gas.
benefit, this is about a 4-week install, so we should have things in place, running and humming before Halloween.
Mr. Tyler?
Yeah, I just want to say this is a priority issue because it's kind of insulting. Even as a school committee member trying to call the central office, and it takes you 7 times to get through. But it's a safety issue also.
Absolutely.
I mean, from what I'm seeing with the proposal, Mark, it just looks like we have some of the D&G associates that's a well-established vendor, and probably some vendors that are up and coming and trying to work their way into the market.
Well, the DEG is a very established vendor. They've been around for a very long time. Clear Sound is our current incumbent vendor, and Real Time is a vendor up in Norton that's done a lot of work for municipalities and schools.
I think my last comment, in today's day and age, not to have phone communication in all of our schools, it's more than just a safety issue. It's impractical. It's just, it needs to be done, whatever the cost is, to tell you the truth. I mean, I would go with the high bid if I had to, but it's just something that is well needed here. And again, it's just impractical in today's day and age to actually figure what's going on with our phone system. So let's get this fixed one way or another.
Absolutely. Mr. Storrs.
So the motion is to endorse the efforts. The efforts are great, thank you. Do you need us, I know in the past when we've had multiple quotes, the committee normally needs to vote on the one that we approved, correct? Or is that not needed in this case?
Not by state purchasing law or by school committee policy, given the amount.
Okay, because of the amount, we don't need to do anything. Thank you.
No, the way we left it at the committee meeting was that because of the time frame and because of the urgency, the committee wanted to endorse Mr. Furtado's efforts to get it done. We didn't want to have to wait for him to bring the quotes back to the subcommittee meeting, then for the subcommittee to have a full meeting to bring it forward. And because of the dollar value that was involved, we felt that we could pursue this avenue, and it's nice that the numbers came in to support how we hoped it would be able to work. So thank you very much, Mr. Furtado. So, any other comments or questions? Okay, that's for vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Our next meeting is October 7th, 7 o'clock in this room, and that is the end of my report.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. So we have 2 items remaining on our agenda for tonight. A briefing on transportation services and a presentation led by Mrs. Scales and Mr. Sawyer on the strategic planning initiative for the Attleboro School District and setting our long-term goals for the benefit of students focused on teaching and learning. It would be nice if we had only one item remaining on the agenda, and you can take a guess as to which one I would prefer to be talking about. But as an example, Mrs. Scales and I have had the pleasure over the past couple of weeks to stopping into many of our PTO meetings, the first meetings of the year, on behalf of the committee, to welcome those individuals back, thank them for all the work they do for the district, and to give a little bit of a preview as to this important project that the school committee will be taking on that we've discussed periodically since our orientation. And there's been a very enthusiastic response. People have been very gracious, especially the PTO officers who have allowed us to parachute in, sometimes without notice. And then when we've opened it up for questions, the questions have concentrated primarily on the dysfunction that has occurred in the transportation services over the opening of the school. We spent a significant amount of time on it at our meeting on September 8th. I'm hopeful, as it will become clear, I think, during this briefing, that we may be spending less time on it going forward, and I certainly think the community would be hopeful about that as well. I did want to make one point at the outset. There are 2 issues that could be described as the transportation difficulty that we're dealing with. And while some may try to conflate those 2, they are separate and distinct. The first is with regard to the transportation budget and our ongoing interplay with the municipal government in terms of making sure that that's properly budgeted for and the necessary appropriations are made. The second has to do with the logistical difficulties that we dealt with in the opening of school. And so, because some have the pleasure to not deal with these issues on an hourly basis, sometimes those issues might get confused. But I think it's important to note that these are 2 separate things. First, and Mr. Furtado, Mr. Sheen, feel free to jump in at any point here. First, just a quick timeline, and this is with regard to the first of those 2 issues, the transportation budget issue. On May 19th, the school committee approved our school administration's recommendation to request from the municipal government $3.78 million for transportation. The mayor made a recommendation for an appropriation after communicating thoroughly with the school committee and the administration and the rationale of he and his administration, made a recommendation to the city council for $3.48 million. The city council then, as has been discussed at length at this table, made an appropriation significantly less than that, in the vicinity of $3.1 million. The mayor has since sent to the city council a request for a supplemental appropriation that would bridge the gap between his original recommendation and what they appropriated. That's the $400,000 that on September 16th was referred back to the Finance Committee of the City Council. I would also note, as it says on the right side of the slide, that myself, Mr. Sheehan, Mr. Furtado, have Mr. Larson, as the Finance Chair, have appeared before the City Council on 4 occasions since June. When our next appearance will be, I don't know. I will be conferring with President Cook in the coming days, but I think that timeline is important. With regard to the rest of the numbers, there's approximately a $300,000 difference between the mayor's recommendation and what the school committee originally requested. Okay, within that $300,000, that includes $100,000 that the committee's decision on June 9th to lease instead of purchase the vehicles that are needed to replace the ones that are breaking down. These are the internal vehicles. That shaves essentially $100,000 off of that difference. That leaves a $200,000 difference. And again, there's been ample communication between the school administration, Mayor Dumas, and his staff members. So while officially there is a difference between those numbers, it's a relatively narrow gap, and with each entity essentially understanding where the other one is coming from and the rationale that we're using when we get to these numbers. Now, Mr. Furtado did identify for the City Council at his appearance on September 16th that the current projections would result in approximately $168,000 over what the mayor is currently recommending. It still does not bring it all the way up to the $3.78 million that the school committee approved and requested after several months of being told not to lowball as we had in the past. But the numbers are all relatively in the same fiscal neighborhood. Is that a fair characterization, Mr. Furtado? And that's essentially where we are with regard to that. Now, again, the City Council did refer the matter back to the Finance Committee. I will be conferring with President Cook and to get a sense as to whether or not there are additional questions that we could answer. I know there's been some discussion, and there was some at the City Council's meeting last night about the school committee potentially appearing before the City Council. What I communicated to Mr. Cook that night, and I'll continue to, and I would say President Cook has been exceedingly gracious and considerate in terms of his communication with this committee and with myself, and I'm grateful to him for that. If there are questions that we can answer, we will answer them. Given the issues that we're dealing with, I don't think the policy-making body of the school system is going to have much more information, frankly. I think our administrators are as always, ready, willing, and able to answer those questions. But in terms of what the questions are at the moment, I don't know. But those consultations are ongoing, and I think that we'll just continue to endeavor to have a strong, constructive, and productive relationship with our friends in the City Council. Mr. Tyler.
Mr. Chairman, I have to say on this transportation deficit, enough is enough. The City Council asked the school committee, and specifically the finance subcommittee, to come up and the business manager come up with a realistic transportation number. They did that. It came up to be $3.7 million. Now, as appears on the board right here, either school committee members or members of the administration have appeared before them time and time again to try to explain this. It's not that complicated because we are a public school system. We have to provide transportation if a student walks in the door tomorrow. And if it's homeless transportation, it's homeless transportation. If it's regular transportation, it's regular. I mean, We are wasting so much time and effort on this transportation instead of moving this system forward that this school committee, when we first got together in January, stated that we were going to do. And I don't think it makes any sense for any school committee member or any administrator to appear before the city council again to explain this, because it doesn't change. We were told by Deb Gould a very simple answer to this. The city has to fund transportation. If we go over on a bill, it's not our bill. It's the city of Attleboro's. They have to pay the bill. So we told them what they actually gave us at the beginning of the year does not even cover our contractual obligations. And yet they still want to know where exactly every dollar is going to, and they want this guarantee that we're not going to come back with more. We can't guarantee that. We're a public school system. We're not a charter school. We're not 400 students, and that's it. I am just sick and tired of explaining this issue, and it's time to stick up for our administration and our finance committee. Did a great job, but we're coming up with a realistic number. They explained it to us. I think we as a committee all agreed that was a realistic number. I think we're just beating this drum too hard. At the last city council meeting that I watched, I don't want to use the word dysfunctional, but it was unsettling, to say the least, okay? It is what it is. We don't have control over it. We wish we had better control over it. Transportation is always going to be a problem. I don't think anybody's ever heard a complaint about the school committee not spending their Chapter 60 money in a wrong way, right? So it is what it is. I mean, if they don't agree to increase it by 400,000, I'm glad the mayor brought it up. But if they don't, I don't think we should continue to go there and try to prove our point. We've already made our point numerous times, and it's taken a lot of time away from bringing this district forward. And I, for one, am not willing to give another minute towards transportation, except to our administrators when they tell us there's an upcoming bill for that. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you, Mr. Tyler. Mr. Larson.
Just two comments. One, I think after being at the last meeting with Mr. Furtado and then watching what transpired later on that evening, I don't see there's any reason why any of us should attend another city council meeting in reference to the cost of transportation. That's my personal feeling. I would like to take the opportunity though to thank Mr. Furtado for his appearance on the 16th, his work with Mr. Rose on this issue, and I would also like to publicly thank President Cook on the city council, because I think he gets it. I think he's dealing with some very difficult issues around his table, and I hope, I wish him the best there. That concludes my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. Mr. Storrs, then Mr. Withers.
If my understanding is correct, we've provided to the city council effectively a binder full of information that explains this. Is that a correct statement?
That's correct.
In your opinion, does that explain it to the point where it should be extremely obvious that that value is derived from something that makes sense?
You can certainly do the math and know that the 3.078 million is not going to get it done. And you know, where the ceiling is depends on the variables we have no control over. So our projections, if you run by those numbers, then you're kind of in the $3.6, $3.7 million range.
So the information has been provided.
Yeah.
It's theirs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Withers.
I'd be interested to see if and when we get questions from them as to what their concerns really are, because while I agree with the sentiment that we shouldn't spend more time talking about this and we shouldn't go to city council meeting to discuss it, what I want to see stop is, you know, situations where we have our administrators go, we have representatives of the committee go, and all seems to go well and there are no questions asked, and then we leave and 10 minutes later, you know, this committee and the administration is getting blasted.
Open
and that's
season.
That's what happens every time. And if, you know, meeting with them in public would, you know, stop the childish behavior, then I'd be willing to do it for that purpose and that purpose alone. But I think if we were to meet with them, I absolutely agree, we would need to know questions beforehand, because I think they're dragging it out as they see, you know, an easy target for them for whatever reason, to get their names in the paper or whatever.
Yeah, the reason is what escapes me, frankly, and I would say that I more than appreciate the committee's comments with regard to the amount of time that we've spent on this. It's extremely disappointing. It's not fair to the community. There's a reason that the community, that the charter calls for an autonomous governing body of the school system. It is so that the school committee can focus on schools and focus on trying to improve teaching and learning. If we don't address operational concerns, then we can't do our job effectively. And that's why we spend whatever time we need to. Unfortunately, I think in this instance, we're exceeding the amount of time that we need to. And I think that's why all of us sort of share that disappointment. Now, that being said, the City Council has an important job to do. They do have a responsibility to oversee all of Attleboro's taxpayer dollars, and to the extent that there are members who have questions, this committee will do everything we need to make sure those questions are answered. But in terms of appearances and whatnot, again, we've got a lot of work to do over the course of the next year, and participating in some of the intramural activities is frankly just not going to make it onto our agenda. But I think, as I said, I'm going to confer with President Cook in the coming days. And again, I understand we're all frustrated. I am as well. But I continue to believe that most members of the City Council are trying to do the right thing and trying to be responsible. What's happening in this instance, I don't think is responsible. And I think that's just one of the issues that we're going to just have to work out. And again, I'll be speaking with President Cook in the coming days, and I'll keep the committee informed. Mr. Furtado, final comment?
Just a point for the committee. From a process perspective, we are required to encumber any funds that are contractually obligated. Therefore, as we have students with special needs who are transporting out of our district, as we arrange for those services, we don't pay by week. We encumber the full year's liability in our budget. It may turn out that the student does not need those services for a full year, but we are required, as we sit here today, to say it's a full year's worth of services. As such, our contractual obligations right now exceed the 3.07 or 3.083, whatever the number is, current budget. We are in excess of our current budget. We cannot enter purchase orders for services that we are obligated to provide for out-of-district transportation, and we're kind of in a bind. I met with the auditor today. We're going over a couple of strategies to deal with that, but we're underwater right now as we sit here from a process perspective, not necessarily from a financial perspective, but certainly from a process perspective.
Right. Again, we're gonna work through it. We'll get through these issues. We're not going to spend the rest of the year talking about this, but we do have a couple other transportation issues to get through, and so we will do that now. Again, this is separate from our funding governmental relations issue. We have had some significant logistical difficulties with regard to the opening of school. It took up significantly more time than we would have liked at our first meeting of the school year, which, by the way, a school year that opened with a tremendous amount of enthusiasm and excitement throughout the district. For those who have had the opportunity to be in the buildings over the course of the last several weeks, the teachers, paraprofessionals, clerical workers, custodial staff, everyone has started the year with a tremendous amount of energy and focused, with their focus where it should be, on students and on teaching and learning. However, we did have some issues. Essentially, the causes, as we discussed at the last meeting, were some human error, some normal stumbling blocks that go with the implementation of new information systems. And the causes resulted in, we essentially boiled it down to 5 or 6 issues. And each have been addressed to varying degrees. And I know Mr. Sheen and Mr. Furtado may have some comments about each of these, but just for purposes of keeping the community informed, we want to just run through them. First, there was a delay in the assignment of kindergarten and special education students. That issue has been addressed. All students, and again, I'm waiting for anyone to jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, because there's a reason we're doing it publicly, but those students are assigned and those students are on buses, and that, there we go.
The buses are running on time and on schedule.
Check.
Sorry, that's across the board?
Including Willett.
Across the board, okay.
And I would just say, and we'll get to this in a second, but on schedule in the first month of school is a little bit of a gray area, but
yes.
Perhaps we want to qualify that with relatively on schedule. The Bishop Fien and St. John's overlap. This was, again, We think more a change in the extent to which that was occurring as opposed to a sort of a first-time precedent. That issue has been addressed in its entirety, correct? And there are no St. John students with Bishop Fien students?
There are none.
Okay. Now, we had timeliness issues, and again, we'll talk about the general timeliness issues momentarily, but it was very clear that the concentration of the timeliness issues were with our friends at St. John's, with run times exceeding 90 minutes on occasion. Not really on occasion, actually consistently. We did have some consistency, if nothing else. St. John's kids were consistently getting out over 90 minutes. That has been addressed and remedied, correct?
Yes, by eliminating that stopover at Fien, eliminating the Fien stops, has consolidated those routes to comply with policy.
Okay, thank you. Complying with policy, always a good idea. All right, so we'll move on to our general timeliness issues, and this is not, as it normally would not be in the third week of school, completely resolved itself. Is that a fair statement? Okay. Any sense, anything sort of outside the ordinary course of the first month of school that we need to be aware of?
No.
Okay. All right, now, with regard to our fifth issue, the administration of the fee-for-service program. That list is largely is to some degree processed, but Mr. Furtado, do you have any?
Well, we have
updates?
particular concentrations in places like Studley and Brennan, and some easier processing, say at the high school, where buses aren't always full because students drive. So the heavily concentrated areas of Studley and Brennan have been assigned, not formally through the schools yet, but assigned, and the high school in its entirety has been assigned as well. So at this point, we expect to have those assignments out, known by the families and parents, and active as of Wednesday.
Okay.
For those
for Studley, Brennan, and high school.
Right.
Okay. And bearing in mind the aversion that this committee has to specific dates when we are not sure that we'll be able to meet those specific dates, do we have a general timetable as to the rest of the list?
Yes. With regard to notification of the parents for fee-for-service, with regard to students being provided a bus stop and a bus number and a pickup time, I'm looking at October 1st, a week from tomorrow.
And that
we're looking for all of that information, that process to be completed.
And that is our goal.
That's the goal. No promises,
Right.
but that's the goal, and I think I think that's realistic with regard to what the trend has been up to this date with the other schools that we've already worked on.
In the general timetable of October 1st, are we distinguishing between students that are technically within the fee-for-service zone or within the Walker zone, or is that the entire 475 some odd students that have signed up for the service that we expect will be, is that same timetable? Or?
I'm looking at fee-for-service students and not the walkers at this particular time.
Okay, so the
Depending
timetable
on the
that we're
amount
working
of
on.
space that's available on the buses and not put another bus on.
Okay. All right, and so that, if the October 1st is the general timetable for students that are technically within the fee-for-service zone,
Right.
then we still have these 75 or so students that we have to determine based on capacity, which our original goal date wasn't October 15th.
Correct.
And is that still intact?
Yes.
Based on the assessment of the capacity?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Withers?
Oh, yeah, the October 1st date, that's for all the other schools other than Brennan.
Yes. Yes,
Studley and-
Thatcher, Warm, Sutter, Quello, Hyman Fine, Hill Robertson, and Willett.
Then October 15th would be for all schools?
Walkers.
Walkers
Walk-
for all
right.
schools, yes.
Okay.
Okay. And is the list 475, that's remained intact?
Let's check this.
Okay. All right. Moving on to our final and most important issue was with regard to, because of the logistical problems and the errors that were made in the development of the system, there was an influx of concerns raised by parents with regard to the safety of bus stops. The superintendent has, over the last 10 days, provided daily updates as to the work that is being done with regard to this. I'm grateful to you, Mr. Sheehan, for that. I think that this administration knows the degree to which this committee prioritizes student safety, and that, frankly, while there were some issues that just from an organizational standpoint needed to be addressed so that we could get to the safety issues, there hasn't been anything that has been prioritized before that. Now, this the volume of concerns that were raised, frankly, has exceeded our capacity to respond. And by respond, I mean keep it documented, keep it organized, call the person back. We've done as good of a job as we can, and I'm grateful to the superintendent, Ms. Nelson, and all the people that have contributed to that. But as you'll see on this, these next two slides, the list of stops that were addressed is significant. Now, based on the policy, when a parent raises a concern with regard to the safety of a bus stop, and the safety of a bus stop could mean no sidewalk, it could mean fine during nice weather, not during the winter, it could mean the distance the child has to walk from the residence to the bus stop and the road that that child would be walking on. It could be all different types of safety concerns. As I said, the volume of concerns that were raised was staggering. It should give us all pause and to think about when these decisions are made, what are the full implications of them. Now, by policy, when the concern is raised, the administration makes an assessment. If the bus stop is deemed unsafe, a change is made. If the administration feels as though the bus stop is in fact safe, the parent or constituent has the opportunity to have the stop reviewed by public safety officials. That's happened in some instances, and that's how some of those decisions have been made under the policy. What is on the slide now is a list. It is a long list. It's on the first and the second slide. These are stops that have either been reinstated or created because of safety concerns. There are likely other stops that have been added or reinstated that frankly didn't make the list because they were made efficiently and quickly, and they didn't go through the review process that we've had to undertake because of this. So again, there may be others. There are others that, frankly, when they were assessed by the public safety officials, a determination was made that the stop was safe. And as we said on September 8th, the committee's concerns here are not making sure that everyone is happy. It's making sure that everyone is safe. And that's the work that's continuing. And Mr. Sheen, if there's an update with regard to whether or not there are other stops that are either under review or will be reviewed in the coming days.
There may be one or two
Okay.
that are remaining that come in as of today. We're looking at those. If we need to have public safety people accompany us to those stops, we will do so as well. But we're going to look at them tomorrow and make an assessment. And if, quite honestly, if we're unsure, we'll get the opinion of Officer McDonald, who will accompany us to the stop.
Thank you.
The police department is very cooperative with regard to accompanying us to whenever we've needed them.
And we appreciate their time. I suspect that people within the public safety community would say, just like the school committee has other issues that we should be dealing with, there's probably some other work that they could be getting to had this not occurred. But the fact that we've been able to move through as expeditiously as we have, again, we're grateful to the administrators for that. But I will say again, the list is way too long. The fact that we started a school year with this volume of safety concerns that were then validated is embarrassing, and it should never happen again. Any questions or comments related to transportation? All right, then we're going to have to move on to strategic planning. Like it or not, here we go. The strategic planning initiative that the school committee has been committed to since the beginning of our term is geared toward developing long-term objectives for the district, ultimately with the hope of adopting a new mission and vision statement and a strategic plan. This is something that we've spoken about since our orientation. We've talked about it periodically over the course of the spring. The superintendent and I, over the summer, determined that we would like our chief deputies to spearhead this and to co-chair it on behalf of the district and on behalf of the committee. Mrs. Scales and Mr. Sawyer, I think, bring to this project a tremendous amount of experience and a broad perspective on the school district that is necessary for this type of undertaking. I think I speak for the entire committee when I say that we couldn't have more confidence in them and in their leadership. And I'm not just saying that because I've saddled them with this work, which will be time-consuming over the course of the next year. And so I will turn it over to Mrs. Scales and Mr. Sawyer to walk us through the structure and the timeline, some of which all of which we've more or less spoken about before. But our hope is with this discussion to really be able to kickstart this effort and get the project underway.
So, what exactly do we mean by a strategic planning initiative? An institution, an organization of this size, and with this responsibility should have both a clear sense of purpose. It should recognize its own set of beliefs, what it stands for, and have a clear picture of what it wants to become in the future. And it should have a plan for how to get to that future, so that it can make decisions in accordance with that agenda to bring us to that future in a very deliberate manner. So that's the what and the why, and then the who. That's so that your body and our administration and the Leadership Advisory Board, which is an initiative that we'll probably talk about at some length another day, which is how we want to collaborate with the teachers, that all of these groups can make decisions in a way that advances. When we all pull together in the same direction, we're much more likely to realize what it is that we want. So we have some starting points. The first one, which is I think something that we hear talked about quite a bit in this district, we're a whole child, every child district. We want to make sure that we're meeting the needs of every student in the district, and that we're not just having a narrow idea of what it means to meet the needs of students, right? We're worried about the student as an entity, not just a score. We're also very concerned with success, and by success, the state certainly pushes the term career and college readiness. I think it's a term that we should use, and it's a meaningful one. I think that we should be careful to understand that it's really just a placeholder for what it is that we want for students when they leave here, right? Success is readiness for the next phase in life, and whatever it is, and we need to think of ourselves as a pre-K to 12 plus district that really is focused in its entirety on preparing kids for life beyond this institution. And everyone, whether we recognize it or not, shares in all of our success, but also shares the responsibility in producing students who can be successful in this stage of life. So I'd like to turn the next two bullets back over to you, because I think you speak to those quite well.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I would say that the source for these four corners, and I've adopted the term four corners because I think of the strategic plan that needs to be developed as a blank canvas. And it needs to come from the community. Like we did when we assessed the district during the superintendent search, that came from the community and was a grassroots effort. And the strategic planning process is, to a large degree, the same thing, that at the end of the day, the community owns the school system. And it's up to the community as to what types of opportunities are going to be available to students. And so when trying to determine what will go on to this blank canvas, sort of identifying the sort of very broad parameters, which very well might be articulated differently once the stakeholders come in and once that grassroots effort gets underway, I looked at the comprehensive assessment done during the superintendent search, the administration's core values that they tied to that they used as the front page of the budget reports that we looked at over the course of the spring, which goes to a point that Mr. Sawyer made a moment ago, that at its sort of foundation, what a strategic plan is a foundation that decisions are tied back to. And so when someone says to a superintendent, why did you decide to structure that in that way? Or when they ask a school committee, why did you decide to adopt that? It can't just be because that's what's best for the kids. That is not a good enough explanation. That's not an argument. The argument takes place as to what it is that we're trying to do. And of course, there'll be decisions that people will make, a committee will make, or a superintendent will make, and people will say, well, we don't really think that that serves that interest that's identified in the strategic plan. We're not going to get rid of that argument. That has to happen. That's part of living in a free society, and we encourage that because that's how we end up with good ideas and a collaborative process. But we've got to have a foundation to start the discussion on. And so the other two corners are, one, a culture of professionalism and thoughtful leadership. One of the things that we've seen as we've dealt with some of the difficulties of the past several weeks, is that we have a tremendously talented staff. We have individuals who have devoted their lives to professional education, from public education rather, from the administration, throughout the faculty, and all the other different positions that keep this district moving forward. And they need to be treated like professionals. We need to empower educators so that way they know that we trust their professional judgment and that they can work in an atmosphere that is conducive to progress. And the other aspect, frankly, is something that needs to be a characteristic of what happens in this room. The leadership has to be thoughtful. We have to think things through and think about what are the short-term and, more importantly, frankly, the long-term implications to the decisions that we make. And the final one, again, to go back to the point I made a moment ago, the schools belong to the community. And we have to find a way to make it so that it's indisputable that the school system is the epicenter of the community. And that way, as Mr. Sawyer has said in the past, that we take down the wall between the schools and the community, so the schools are in the community and embedded therein, and the community is embedded within the school system. And that's, in a very general sense, what we're trying to accomplish. Did I fulfill your expectations? I hope.
You can do it.
All right. Next time, if you're gonna raise the bar that high, you tell me that you do it beforehand.
Well, this is true. Well, I guess, the short version of what he just said is this. Pretty much we're just hoping to chart the course for the Attleboro school system over the next 5 years. And the plan is pretty basic. We'll see. We have 3 subgroups. They each have different and distinct tasks. The mission vision group will be to go over and the core objectives of the school system. Strategic plan is to come up with key components of what the strategic plan will look like. And the public engagement subgroup will be to develop a comprehensive plan to promote and market the school system within and around Attleboro. And we actually have a very good diverse group of over 30 volunteers who represent the different stakeholders in the schools, in the community. We're very thankful for them.
And their patience.
Yes, and their patience.
Because they have volunteered, and they've been raring to go, and they'll have questions from time to time, but they've also had to sit tight while we work through a few other issues.
As the sequence will show, in addition to the subgroups working independently during the process, there will be opportunities for them to share their work with the committee, keeping us informed along the way. There will also be ample opportunities for the public comment built into the process, and it is our hope to get feedback from the different stakeholders through our collaboration with the different PTOs and by holding public forums.
And again, this is very similar to the process that unfolded during the superintendent search, when we gave each building community the opportunity to make comments so that we can incorporate their feedback and get a sense as to how the decisions that we're making here are having a real impact at the building level.
So what are each of those 3 groups going to do? Well, the first group, the mission vision subgroup, they're going to agree on the core values for the district. What do we believe in, and what are we going to stand for? Then they're going to develop a mission statement that will articulate the purpose of the organization, why we come here every day and do what we do. What's the reason for our work? And then the vision statement is an expression of our hopes for what the organization will look like in the future. The strategic planning group will develop goals that are related to those core values, and create guiding principles for the decisions to be made in the district. The strategic plan will look at the things that we are doing well, that we want to keep going and not lose in any sort of change process, the things that we need to fix, and then also, what are the primary questions that we need to answer. The end of the 5-year process will be the creation of the next 5-year process, and so that group will conceive how that will exactly work.
Is the class of 2025 in the school system yet? What class did we just?
18.
They are. What class are they? Is that kindergarten or?
First grade.
Third grade, second grade,
All right. Everybody's yelling out different numbers. What year are the kids?
third grade.
Second and third grade. And so, again, I get like a number of things that we've discussed tonight. This sounds very abstract. Okay? I don't think anyone, frankly, is going to lose sleep tonight over exactly what are we going to be doing in 2025. Okay? I know some of us have some hopes what we're not doing in 2025. But I think that, I don't know that this discussion took place 10 or 12 years ago. I know that it should have, and I know that one of the responsibilities of people who are on this committee is to, as we talked about during the orientation, understand that we're all temporary workers, and that at some point, I don't know if it'll be this room or not, but somebody will be coming into a room to make decisions, and their jobs will be easier if we've thought about things ahead of time.
The public engagement group will be working on systematic engagement. One of the reasons why I think public engagement is not where it could be in this district is because it comes and goes with the individual people involved. We need to systematize our engagement with the public. Leadership expectations. We need to recognize, the leaders in this district need to recognize that public engagement is a significant part of the job, not just something to get to if there's time.
And is it fair to say, is it accurate to say that that's now consistent with the state's expectations with regard to the evaluation system?
Yes, every educator in the district is now evaluated with one of the 4 standards being community engagement. We need to become more image conscious. Many people within the organization bemoan the fact that people have some misguided opinions about what goes on within the organization, but we don't exactly do much to get out there and change those minds. So that's something that we need to do much better job on. And then the tactical commitment. There are a lot of things we could be doing that we need to think through and use the resources that we have to accomplish all these things. What kinds of things we'll be looking at? What are the capital improvement infrastructure priorities that the school committee and the school administration must confront? We've already talked about some of these at recent meetings, and this will be a significant question. Are we appropriately marketing and utilizing HS as a comprehensive high school? I know that this is one of our agenda items at the Curriculum and Instruction Subcommittee for next week. We want to put a much greater focus on comprehensive higher education. How do we define well-roundedness? So, we already talked, I mentioned that we were concerned about the whole child. So we want well-rounded students, but I think if you ask 10 people, you'll get 10 different answers exactly what that means. And while no one gets to be the ultimate definer of that, we should come to some consensus about what we mean when we say that. Are we meeting the educational needs, academic, social, emotional of all students? How do we position the school system as the epicenter of the community, to refer back to what you were saying, Mr. Murphy, about how the community needs to recognize the importance of the schools, and the schools need to recognize its importance as a member of the community. How do we ensure that the budget of the school system is inextricably linked to the strategic plan of the school system? So when it comes budget time, we should be able to justify all the decision as it stems back from its ability to accomplish what the strategic plan is set to do.
So again, and I'm glad that we finished on that point, because I think in some ways it's sort of the most tangible example of what a effective and well thought out strategic plan can do. It can provide a defense for decisions that are made. And without it, frankly, I don't know that we can responsibly do the job that we were elected to do in terms of articulating the message of the district. Decisions seem arbitrary when they're not tied to some sort of mission or some sort of goal. And while we generally understand our goals are we want to provide greater opportunities for students, we want to treat our staff well, we want this to be a district that people want to enroll their children. And you'll notice that throughout this, there are connections to the work that some of the subcommittees of the school committee are doing, the work that the superintendent and Mr. Sawyer have led over the course of the last year with regard to teacher leadership. I think this is it's a coherent step forward, that all these efforts are tied together, and hopefully, if brought to fruition, people will look back on this as developing a document that helps guide this district over the next 5 years. And that's it. 5 years from now, that will be a different school district, and we'll need a different vision. The mission may be more similar, but that's one of the issues that we're I think, in some ways struggling with right now, is that our vision statement was adopted 8 years ago. A lot of things have changed over the course of the last 8 years. Things have changed in the world, things have changed in Attleboro, things have changed within this district. And I think one of the ways that school systems remain effective and remain relevant is that you recognize that, and that we grow with the times, and that's the goal, and that's what Mrs. Scales, Mr. Sawyer, and the 30 volunteers that they've mentioned, who by the way represent a myriad of perspectives and backgrounds on the school system, different types of connections, all buildings, different career paths, and I think it's a group that I think the school committee will enjoy working with, and I think that this has a lot of potential. And again, I'm grateful to Mr. Sawyer and Mrs. Scales for being willing to take on the leadership role. Are there questions or comments from the committee? Mr. Larson and Mr. Tyler.
I'm really looking forward to this getting going. I think one of the things I've seen in different groups outside of this is it's a developing best practice in a lot of groups, that at the beginning of their planning and strategy sessions, they make a point of reading aloud their vision statement and their mission statement at the beginning of the meeting, so that there's a clear understanding as to all the discussions that go on after that. The discussions are basically to support those two statements, and if they don't support those two statements, they shouldn't be talked about. They don't need to be talked about, because if those statements are written correctly and adopted correctly, everything we do in this room should in one way or another support those two statements. And it's something that's growing in other places, and I'm excited to see that we're adopting the same philosophy. So we're going to be a much better group for it.
Well said. Thank you, Mr. Larson. Mr. Tyler.
I think it's great to come up with a strategic plan, and I want to thank Lori and Dave and all the volunteers for the hard work they put into this. And I want to go back to beat a drum on this, but there was two parts of this presentation tonight that stuck out to me, that Mr. Sawyer brought up. Image conscious and budget linked to strategic planning. Very important to get where we want to be. And without going back, this is what the transportation issue does to us and stuff like that. It puts the whole school district in a negative light. It takes away from time to come up with strategic plans to move forward. This is what we should be doing, and we had some great stories tonight. Dr. McSweeney being elevated to Director of Special Education. I mean, this is what successful school districts do. They culture their own people. They build them up they can hopefully succeed at the next level and the next level. That's what a successful district does. It's well known. You empower the people to do their jobs. You give them the opportunity to rise through the ranks and fulfill their whatever they've planned on in life. And that's why I say this strategically is great, but we have to change how people. We have a lot of infighting in Attleboro between what the municipal council feels and the school committee feels is the way. So we do have to tread that. And I think the chairman gave that earlier. Yes, when I get aggravated about transportation, I've been aggravated about transportation since I first started in this committee. Okay, so it has been little kinship problems, but it's natural. Probably not as much this year as but it's in the past, believe me. But we all got to come together on this. We're one community. We're Attleboro. We want the best for our kids. We want the best for everybody who works in our school system. So, I appreciate you guys putting this group together and Dave reaching out to try to get people to understand that Attleboro is a great place to be. And again, I think we're only one of 15 comprehensive schools in all of Massachusetts, and that should be advertised and brought. I think every student rep that sat in front of us and said that they had when they had to get involved in CTE, some were kind of like, oh boy, but when they get in it, they loved it. Just if it was a welding class or something like that. And I think Tyler could probably speak more on that than I will, but they seem to like that little bit of difference. So we do have to advertise that more. We have a lot to offer here in Attleboro, but we have to stop this little infighting thing between the the school and the city about justifiable needs of this district. And that's all tied in with our mission statement. Just as Mr. Sawyer said, our budget is tied into doing this, you know, so we can't be taking money out of our net school spending and spending it on transportation like we did last year. It's unacceptable. We need to make it very clear that we want to move forward as a district, and we're not going to be brought back on that because of some little hindrances that the city council feels that they want to go over and over again.
Thank you, Mr. Tyler. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Any concluding points by Mrs. Scales or Mr. Sawyer?
Yeah, I look forward to the process.
Excited to start.
It is true. The process is a large part of what needs to happen here, because, you know, that this project in and of itself, I think, will help in some ways to inform the community as to sort of the potential that this district has. And so I'm grateful to Mr. Sheehan, Mr. Sawyer, Mrs. Scales, for the committee, all the administrators who will be participating as well. And as I said, it's going to be a true grassroots effort, and we'll have a tremendous amount of stakeholder involvement. And in the end, we'll have a plan. It'll take some time, and there'll probably be some discussions that need to happen between now and the time where this is produced. But we'll get there. So, and for those who are frustrated at times with the way some of the challenges that come up that we don't expect, I think that with the leadership of the people involved here, we're going to stay focused, and we're going to work to the best interests of both current and future students. So, all right. Thank you again. There is, as I said earlier, there is a change to the subcommittee schedule. The next Curriculum and Instruction Committee subcommittee meeting will be September 30th. Next Finance and Budget is October 7th. Infrastructure and Facilities, October 15th. And Policy, probably not October 15th. And we will get back to you as to when exactly that's going to occur. So we got, in the Policy Subcommittee schedule, I got it, I was 2 for 4. In some endeavors would be good. At this time, I'll make a motion to enter into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct a strategy session in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel. The school committee will not be reconvening in public session.
Second.
Mrs. Zito?
Yes.
Mr. Tyler?
Yes.
Mr. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy, yes. Mrs. Scales?
Yes.
Mrs. Sawyer?
Yes.
Mr. Withers?
Yes.
Mr. Storrs?
Yes.
And we will take a 5-minute recess.
What about Mrs. Singer?
Yes, thank you. Yes. I'll just say yes.
Ms. Singer, you all 4 executive
Nope,
sessions?
she's out of here. That's it.
I'm out. I wasn't called. I'm going home. I'm